Welcome back everyone. Bohemia Interactive have just released another developer blog for the upcoming DayZ Badlands expansion, and this one is absolutely packed with information. Now on the surface, it looks like they're simply talking about environment design and how some of the buildings are created. But once you start reading between the lines, the blog actually tells us a huge amount about how Badlands is going to play. Not just where we're going to loot, not just what the towns will look like, but how firefights, movement, survival, and even player psychology are all going to change compared to Chernarus, Livonia and Sakal. So today, we're going to break the whole thing down, explain why each section matters, and discuss what this could mean when we finally get our hands on Nasdara. The first big takeaway: Badlands isn't a sniper map. One thing the developers wanted to address immediately was a concern many players had after seeing the reveal trailer. People assumed because the map is based around a desert environment that we'd be dealing with endless sniper battles across huge open spaces. Instead, Bohemia almost immediately shuts that idea down. Yes, long-range engagements will absolutely still exist. They even mention those iconic 500-meter shots and hearing bullets crack over your head. But they make it very clear this isn't the identity of Badlands. Instead, Nasdara has been built around density, farmland, villages, large towns, cities, apartment blocks, markets, industrial areas. Every one of these dramatically changes how players engage each other. This is important because it means Badlands isn't simply Chernarus with less grass. It's an entirely different style of combat. Smart movement is becoming more important than aim. One sentence in this blog really stood out to me. The developers say, smart movement now matters more than ever. That might sound like marketing, but when you combine it with everything else they're saying, it actually makes complete sense. They're designing terrain where every sniper position has counters: rocks, riverbeds, bushes, walls, buildings, flanking routes, multiple elevation levels. Instead of seeing another player and instantly taking a shot, players will constantly be asking, can I rotate? Can I disappear? Can I get above them? Can I force them into CQB? That changes the pace of every fight. Why Afghanistan makes sense. The developers openly say Nasdara takes inspiration from Afghanistan and surrounding regions, not politically, not historically, but geographically. That's actually incredibly clever. Afghanistan is famous for something military analysts have talked about for decades. One minute you're crossing wide open valleys, the next you're inside incredible dense urban settlements. The transition between those two environments is brutal, and that's exactly what Bohemia wants. One moment you're scanning hundreds of meters, 30 seconds later, you're clearing rooms. That's something DayZ has never really done before. Riverbeds could become meta. This was one of my favourite details. The dried river systems aren't simply decoration, they're natural cover. Think about it. Instead of roads becoming the safest routes, players might start travelling through riverbeds. You stay hidden, you break line of sight, you move between towns unnoticed. That immediately creates new ambush opportunities. Imagine following footprints through dried river systems. Imagine hearing footsteps echoing around the rocks. Those little environmental details completely change how people rotate around the map. Cities designed like labyrinths. The developers actually compare Nasdara cities to Kabul, not because they're recreating the city, but because of the feeling: getting lost, constant choices, dead ends, shortcuts, tiny alleyways, street vendors, parked vehicles, cover everywhere. That immediately tells me one thing: every fight is going to become unpredictable. Compare that with somewhere like Cherno. Many streets are fairly open, you generally know where someone is going. Nasdara sounds completely different. Lose line of sight for 2 seconds and your opponent could literally appear behind you. Verticality changes everything. This might actually be the biggest gameplay reveal of the blog. The developers repeatedly talk about height, not one apartment block, entire districts. Buildings connected together, rooftops, ladders, different elevations, neighbouring buildings. That means roof camping won't simply be the best spot, because someone can now potentially reach a taller building nearby. That's brilliant game design. Instead of removing camping, they're creating counters. That's always better. Rooftops become a second map. This bit really got me excited. The rooftops aren't simply viewpoints, they're traversal routes. Think about it. You might loot an entire district without ever touching the street, or you could hunt another player entirely across rooftops. Meanwhile, the people below are trying to work out where those shots are coming from. That creates a completely new layer of gameplay DayZ has never really had before. Almost like there are two maps existing at once. the streets and the rooftops. The bazaar could become the new Northwest Airfield. Let's talk about the bazaar, because I genuinely think this could become one of the hottest PvP locations in DayZ history. At first glance, it's simply a marketplace, but once the developers explain how it's built, you realise what's happening. Multiple entrances, corners, connected corridors, roof access, courtyards, openable doors, military loot, gun shops, generic loot, residential apartments, every single thing players need inside one giant maze. Now imagine several groups arriving at once. You won't know who's above you, who's behind a wall, who's waiting inside a shop, or who's watching from another rooftop. This could become absolute chaos. Gun shops are going to be hotspots. One tiny detail jumps out immediately. Gun stores. Not military bases, not checkpoints, gun stores. And they contain military loot. That changes player flow completely. Instead of everyone rushing to one military area, you'll have military loot inside towns. That means fresh players, geared squads, bandits, everyone suddenly has a reason to enter urban environments. Expect some of the biggest firefights in Badlands to happen inside these bazaars. The modular design is genius. Most players will skip over this. I actually think it's one of the smartest parts of the entire block. The bazaar isn't one building. It's 6 modular pieces, meaning the developers can build completely different markets throughout Nasdara, without them all looking identical. That's huge for replayability. You never quite know the layout, you still recognise the architecture, but every town feels unique. That prevents players learning one perfect route. They aren't just making pretty buildings. One thing I really appreciated was how often the developers mentioned gameplay before visuals. Everything has a reason. Barricaded windows, openable doors, loot locations, roof access, navigation, sightlines, player flow. This isn't environment artists building pretty scenery, it's level designers building experiences. That's a massive difference. My biggest prediction, if everything in this block plays the way Bohemia describes, Badlands won't be remembered because it's a desert. It will be remembered because movement finally becomes just as important as shooting. Good players won't simply have the best aim. They'll understand routes, escape options, height advantages, riverbeds, roofs, markets, flanking paths, and that's a very different type of DayZ. Final thoughts? Overall, I think this is probably the strongest Badlands developer blog we've had so far. Not because it's revealed flashy new weapons, not because it announced a release date, not because it answered the questions we've all been asking since Badlands was revealed. How is this map actually going to play? And from everything we've seen today, it looks like Bohemia aren't trying to replace Chernarus. They're trying to create a completely different style of DayZ. One where every alley, every rooftop, every dried river and every market stall could be the start of your next story. But now I want to hear from you. What's the biggest thing you took away from this developer blog? Is it the rooftops, the bazaar, the new gun stores, or are you still worried the map might become too sniper focused? Let me know in the comments, I'll be reading every single one. And if you enjoyed today's breakdown, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and I'll keep bringing you all the latest DayZ Badlands news as soon as it drops. See you in the next one.